can see each other. All right, so Egyptian writing. Oh, yeah. So, scribes, just like in Mesopotamia, are the only people who can write in Egypt, all right? They are the record keepers. They are going to be an important social class. Unfortunately, in Egypt, only boys were allowed to be scribes, and they are the ones who started going to school around age 5. We see a lot of similarities, actually, with our schooling and Egyptian schooling, as they, too, spent about 12 or more years in teaching, learning, being taught. Whereas in our schools, you start in kindergarten around age 5, and then you have 13 years because you have kindergarten, then 1st through 12th grade. Isn't that cool? But hieroglyphics is going to take a ton of time to learn how to do. We're going to see that it's thousands and thousands of characters and how it's also extremely complicated how to learn it. And as we talked about from before, papyrus is going to be what is used to make the paper. It'll be woven together and then smashed through the hammer, dried out, so that we can then go right on it. All right. They used a stylus, just like how we had our Mesopotamians use a stylus. Their styluses, we'll see in the next slide, they're going to be longer, thinner, and used ink as opposed to, the Mesopotamian stylus, which would be shorter, stubbier, and go through the clay. So, scribes are the writers. Only boys could be scribes, and it took a long time to learn. So that's all you really need to have from this slide, because you know this stuff. You know it. So why did it take so long to learn? Well, by the way, here's the stylus, your scroll, papyrus. We saw papyrus yesterday, so I'm not too excited about this. So why were hieroglyphics so hard? Well, English has 27 characters. You know your ABCs, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I sing it all the time with my daughter. She gets a little screwed up around P, the MNOP. But ancient Egyptian has over 2,000. Yeah. Imagine if your ABCs were 2,000 letters long. How long would it take you to go through them? A really long time. That's why you're not going to have preschoolers learning this. But here's the thing, too. We're going to see it gets more complicated than that. Now, first off, each of those 2,000 hieroglyphics, they represented an object. That means they are what's called a pictogram, a picture to represent something. So, for example, we'll pretend that Madeline Kate wants to write a poem to a boy, and she says, "You are my sunshine." So she has a sun on there to go and have a sun. Makes sense. Pictogram, sun means sun, right? Okay. But here's the thing. Everything isn't just a pictogram. Also, some of these objects could represent an idea, meaning, so 2,000 symbols, they're pictograms. Those same 2,000 symbols are ideograms. No, Samuel, that's not what you call your brother's ideograms. No, ideograms are images that mean ideas. So, that "You are my sunshine" that Madeline Kate is writing to that cute boy could also be represented with the sun as well, because sunshine, sunlight, daylight, warmth, happiness. It's represented through that sun as well. It's a good thing she has her camera off, because she'd probably be all turning red and embarrassed and stuff like that right now. Or getting really mad at me and gonna probably beat me up after class. So, 2,000 symbols they have to learn. 2 meanings. No, 3 meanings for each of them. Yeah, that's right. Because not only are they pictograms, pictures to represent objects, not only are they ideograms, pictures to represent ideas, they are phonograms. That means symbols to represent sounds. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? So you have to learn all the phonograms, pictograms, ideograms, all this stuff. So this would be an example of an Egyptian alphabet. We see that not all of their things are the same as us. E and I, guess what? One symbol for that, because kind of like the eh sound is kind of the same. And v, both represented with a snake. Look at this. They also have the th and sh having their own symbols. and KH, CH. So we have lots of different symbols being used. So let's put you to the test. What does that spell? So read it, translate it, and someone let me know what they think it is. Who can read hieroglyphics? You know, when I was in 8th grade, I had ancient history with Mrs. Wilson. Not Anna's mom, Mrs. Wilson, but a different Mrs. Wilson. And she made us write our warm-ups, which is the same thing as your do nows for our Egypt unit, in hieroglyphics. We had to write the question and the answer. I actually got really good at hieroglyphics by the end, but at first it took so long. So who thinks they can read that? What does this say?
Me.
Yes, me. Tell me, Karachi.
It says water.
It sure does.
Oh, I know
Ding,
what
ding,
that
ding.
Me.
100 points. You're correct.
Yeah. I was at the. I couldn't find the last one. I was about.
Yeah, it took me a little bit to find. I found like all of them, and I was like, "Where is it?" And then I finally found it.
Once
Yeah.
I found WATE, I knew it was water, but I was just going to make sure. So I was just trying to find where R was.
Good. Okay, so we found that that means water. Hooray. And so here's another thing that we need to know with hieroglyphics is the idea of the cartouche. A cartouche is how they represent and show that a name is being written down. So of course you're going to have your name written in hieroglyphics, but to make sure we know it's a name, they do it inside of this symbol, the cartouche. So we know exactly what we have here. And it's really cool. Normally, on a day like this, we'd actually be like making cartouches with our own names in it in hieroglyphics. But alas, we are doing things on the computer. And writing hieroglyphics on the computer is a lot harder than, you know, with a pencil. Now, we haven't gotten to talk about the 3 different kingdoms of Egypt yet. But we see that there are going to be, there are 2,000 in the, over 2,000 in the Old Kingdom. By the New Kingdom, they're only really using 700 of the different hieroglyphs because it was too many hieroglyphs to have. Now, and they keep on simplifying it. And so by the year 700 BC, almost no one uses hieroglyphics anymore. They start using something called Demotic, which means popular script. So thankfully, it stopped just being the priests who could read and write and the scribes. It started being lots of people could, and lots of people would write in Demotic. So when Ashlyn was writing to her Grammy, she would go write her a letter in Demotic. Priests kept on using hieroglyphics, but people stopped really believing in the old Egyptian gods. You know, eventually they stopped really worshiping them. You know, eventually we have the Greek gods coming in. Eventually Judaism comes in, and eventually Christianity, and then Islam. So we're going to see that the Egyptian hieroglyphics, they just stop being used. And if you don't use them, people forget them. So we get to a time in history where no one knew how to read hieroglyphics. It was very sad because there's all of these temples, all of these cool Egyptian things, and it had these pictures on them, and no one had any idea what in the world they said. Well, thankfully, that's not the case anymore. Now, to understand what happened, I need to back us up just a wee bit. Unfortunately, because of the coronavirus and various things, you did not get the full history experience that you would have loved to have had. And you guys probably didn't talk about Napoleon or any of the wars that he had in Europe. Well, once upon a time in the 1800s, there's a guy named Napoleon. And everyone says he was short, but he wasn't really short because they just had different kinds of measurements, and he was actually average height. But he was really, really good at war. And he wound up going to war with basically all of Europe, and he was mostly winning, except for a couple mistakes when he decided to invade Russia in the winter, and that was a real big disaster. And then the fact that every single European country was like, all right, we're going to go to war with you because you are like an unstoppable monster. And so Napoleon is at war with Europe, and he goes and decides to invade Egypt. And he invades Egypt because the English owned Egypt, and he said, well, if the English have it, I want to take it from them because I'm just a big bully. So he goes to Egypt, and he's having a fun time battling and taking Egypt. And eventually he goes to his soldiers in Egypt and says, all right, the English are over that way, so I'm going to go leave my armies there. I promise I'm not abandoning you and leaving you here forever. I will come back and get you. Spoiler alert, he does not come back and get them. He totally abandons and leaves them there. But he goes off fighting someplace else, and then the British eventually come to take England or Egypt back. So the French soldiers, they were like, well, what are we going to do? The English are coming. They're going to go blow us up with their cannons and shoot us with their guns, and it's just going to be a real bad day. So they start building forts, and they start taking pieces of stone from all over the place to build these forts. Well, near the town of Rosetta, and you'll see why that name is important in a second, the soldiers there are piling up stones to, stop cannonballs from hitting them and hitting the stones instead, because, I much rather a cannonball hit a stone than me. I'm just a little too fragile for that. They go and they see this one stone, and it has all of these scrabbles on it. And they speak French. They're like, parlez-vous en français? Oui, oui. And they don't know what this says. So, but the one guy, the captain, says, that looks kind of important. I'll tell you what, instead of having that blown up by a cannonball, how about we just put that to the side over there? Well, long story short, the English wound up going and conquering, retaking Egypt, and kicking the French out. And while they're doing that, clearing out these forts, they find this stone. And someone, thankfully, studied in college Greek. And they say, hey, that's Greek written on there. That's so weird. We're in Egypt. Why is something in Greek written by Egypt? Spoiler, the Greeks ruled Egypt for a while. We'll talk about that later this year. But it's in Greek. And it's in this other weird language that they had no idea what it said. And it's in hieroglyphics, the thing on all of these Egyptian tombs and things like that. So they go and translate the Greek. And it turns out it was a decree. So sometimes kings and emperors, they like to go make a royal proclamation. And basically the gist of it was, I am Ptolemy V, and I am your ruler, and the gods totally want me to be your ruler, so you should listen to me. All right? That's basically what it said. Well, you're like, okay, we can read the Greek. This is really cool. We know what it says in Greek, but we don't know what the rest of the scribble-scrabble is. Well, eventually, a man named Napoleon goes and says, I wonder if any Egyptian people can read any of this. And they found an old Egyptian priest. He was like really, really old because he actually remembered some of this stuff. He's like, oh, yeah, that's Demotic there. And he's like, Demotic what? Like Demotic, the simple script. We used it before we all learned Arabic and Greek and things like that. And so he figures out what that says. And know what it said? It said, I am Ptolemy V. I am totally your ruler now, and the gods want me to rule, so you should really listen to me. And he's like, whoa, that says the same thing in Greek. How crazy is that? And then they figured, well, if it says the same thing in Greek, it says the same thing in Demotic, it probably says the same thing in hieroglyphics. And then they wind up translating it, and now we can read hieroglyphics too. Isn't that great? Isn't it awesome? Finally, the secrets of the pyramids. Actually, now they're still secrets. But we can learn a lot more now about the Egyptians. So cool. And so then they took it to Britain, and they kept it there for like 200 years, and eventually finally brought it back to Egypt because, of course, it is an Egyptian treasure because it is, made in Egypt, found in Egypt. It's totally Egyptian. But that's a whole long story short. So here we see the Rosetta Stone. It's really, really big, but it's not even the whole thing. It was broken. I know, crazy, right? So this is what we think the rest of it looked like. We don't know for certain, though. This is a guess. Why we think it had this cool art on top, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it got broken during transport or something. I don't know. And people all over the world still come to visit it and check it out. Yes, Aaron.
Do you know what kind of language that is? Do you know what they're writing on there?
We literally just talked about that, dude. You've got
No, I said,
hieroglyphics,
what does that
Demotic,
say?
and Greek.
I'm saying that. What does that say, though?
The gist of it, it says a lot more than this, but each time in each of these three sections says, I am Ptolemy V. I am your rightful ruler. The gods totally want me to rule, so you better listen to me. It says in hieroglyphics, it says it then in Demotic, and then it says it in Greek. And that's how they translate it, because it says the same thing just in 3 different languages. Because just like how Hammurabi's code, they wanted everyone to know the law. Like Ptolemy V was like, I am not going to take any chances, whether you're a Greek speaker or a Demotic speaker, or if you read hieroglyphics like some sort of crazy person, because no one was reading hieroglyphics really back then. You know, here you go. Everyone can understand it.
Mr. Kenny,
Okay.
why is
Yeah.
it called the Rosetta Stone?
I'm sorry, what?
Why is it called the Rosetta Stone?
Because it was found in Rosetta, Egypt.
Okay.
And that's why there's that like language learning software now called Rosetta Stone, named after this, because it's supposed to, you know, help you learn languages. So, my cherubs, your assignment for today would be, there it is, to go into your Thursday folder, and you have, count them, 3 questions, or is it 4? 3 questions. What kind of writing system did the Egyptians develop? Wow, we just talked about that. Why did the Egyptians need hieroglyphics? Pretty obvious and easy. Why was the Nile called the lifeblood of Egypt? Why was the river essential to the Egyptians? Please explain your answer in a short paragraph. So, easy peasy assignment. You're going to use your textbook pages 100 to 107 to be able to be awesome on that. And you have 6 minutes to work on it. I suspect many of you will be able to be finished, you know, within that time. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great lunch. I'll see you all later.
Bye, Mr. Kenny. Have a good weekend.
Au revoir. Have a
Bye,
great
Mr.
weekend.
Kenny. Have a good
You
weekend.
guys. Have fun.
Bye, Mr.
Bye, Mr.
Kenny.
Kenny.
Bye. See you
Bye,
later.
Mr. Kenny.
My
Still
hope
recording
is
today.
I feel better. Give him a
Mr.
high
Kenny,
five.
you're still recording.
High five for me. Boy.
Bye bye. Mr. Kenny, you're still recording.
No, I'm not. Yes, I am. I thought I hit the stop button.